Hi, I'm Carrie Mullins. I'm a freshman at the University of Texas at Austin, studying special education. In one of my required classes, I've learned a lot about the impact of play on children's development. I've also learned how important and beneficial play is to children's education. Despite the benefits of play-based learning that I've learned about in my class and the benefits that I know to be true, unfortunately, play-based learning is disappearing from early childhood education classrooms. The Alliance for Childhood reports that, increasingly, children are not given opportunities for early play. This early play is significant because it's the foundation on which they can build towards more complex play. Furthermore, the U.S. Play Coalition and the Association of Childhood Education have found that, since the No Child Left Behind Act, there has been a continued decline in recess opportunities. To go even further, the American Academy of Pediatrics reports that the No Child Left Behind Act propagated a societal focus on academic readiness, which resulted in structured activities in the classroom which were designed to increase academic results. This has unfortunately led to a decrease in playful learning. This stress on academic achievement is even occurring in preschools. We are literally losing play in preschools. So, what does this mean for young children? So you, listener, might think that this shift to focusing on academic achievement and academic readiness for young children might be a good thing, and some people even think that play is frivolous, and you might be one of the people who think that too. And that's okay for you to think that, but I want to show you how the shift in American education policy from playful learning to academic readiness in our early childhood education classrooms is actually detrimental to young children, because it is. So probably I should start by explaining the benefits of play and play-based learning. There are numerous benefits of play for young children, and especially play-based learning. Celia Genesi from the Teachers College at Columbia University and Ann Haas-Dyson from the University of Illinois define several benefits of play. First, they say that play is interwoven with agency, which means that play gives children the ability to choose their actions and the direction of their actions without other people's instruction. Secondly, they also say that play allows children to set the groundwork for symbol development, which later can lead to written language. Furthermore, Peter Smith from the University of London and Anthony Pellegrini from the University of Minnesota report that physical play supports the physical development of muscles and builds strength, endurance, and skill, all things that could not be gained without play-based instruction and access to recess. Additionally, Julie Nicholson, Ann Baylor, and Riston Woolley published in the American Journal of Play that teachers can tell the difference between kindergartners that have been in play-based transitional kindergarten classrooms and children who were in non-play-based transitional kindergarten classrooms. These teachers explained that the children who were in play-based classrooms have better self-regulation and boosted academics as well as social-emotional development. Some of the most influential developmental theorists even back up these claims. Vygotsky states that play is important for children to develop the intentional behavior essential to higher mental functions. He especially believes that make-believe play can do so. Piaget proclaims that children learn the best when they construct knowledge for themselves, which evidently occurs the most during play-based learning. I could go on and on with these kind of statements because there are articles after articles and studies after studies backing these statements up. Overwhelmingly, what the science says is that play is good for children. It's the best way for them to learn. To get this point across, I interviewed several individuals, asking them to share their perspectives on play-based learning. First, I interviewed Diana. She's a kindergarten teacher at a public school in San Antonio. She teaches at my former kindergarten. Also in the room is a former high school teacher of mine, Erica. She'll jump in from time to time. She teaches at the same public school district as Diana.
My degree is in special education with an emphasis in early childhood. So I've been teaching early childhood for 10 out of the 11 years that I've been teaching.
Awesome. And have you always taught at public schools?
Yes. Okay. I've taught at charters and 2 school districts.
Okay, cool. And what age do you usually work in?
Except for the 1 year, I've taught 3 and 4 year olds.
Okay.
3,
so
4, and 5, yes.
Amazing. Okay. Well, today we want to talk about play and early childhood education, and so I was wondering what your views on play are.
I believe that children should spend the majority of their time playing. This is how they develop their language, problem-solving skills. They learn to communicate both orally but also socially, and learn body language cues as well. This is how they learn, and society in general doesn't understand that. And for so long, children were meant to, that saying, seen but not be heard. Yet, all research shows that children need play to develop and engage and build those skills to become successful adults.
Yeah. So, in your classroom experience, have you seen in your students how play has affected them?
Yes. So, not so much in my classroom or even in my current school district, but in other districts and charter schools, and in no fault of the school districts or charter schools, this comes down from legislators, and what used to be kinder is now in pre-K, and what used to be first grade is now in kinder. So it's in no fault of the teachers or the school districts. It's just that all these legislators have pushed these things down, that teachers have to push curriculum earlier and earlier on instead of allowing children to experience play and language as they should. Now they're sitting for hours at a time when they're not developmentally ready to do any of the tasks that they're asking for. Like, one of the things that I've seen as early as 3 is trying to hold a pencil. Well, your muscles in your hands don't develop when you're 3. Like, you need other muscle tone, and your muscles aren't developed by 3 yet. We're asking for these fine motor abilities that you get through play. Like, you learn how to dump, you learn how to pick up beads, which should come before writing. And I think nobody understands that importance of play until you've really been working with children for a long time and understand those the developmental sequence of these come from play. And again, it's in no fault of a school district or but we have so many legislators who don't understand this, or adults in general, that it's hindering children. And I believe that's why we're seeing so much ADHD and social emotional problems, because we're making children not play, whereas in past decades it wasn't that way. So that's just how I feel about play and the importance. And really, maybe teachers need to understand that, and every teacher should take a course, or even every adult should understand why this is important. True play, not iPad play, true play in a playground, in the classroom, building blocks, pretend area. Like, these are areas where children truly develop skills.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. And what do you think some of the potential negative impacts of these, kinders, the new first grade classrooms could be, where play is not a part of the curriculum?
So I think, again, like, over the decades, you've seen how much ADHD has significantly increased, both in the classroom and outside the classroom. Children struggle with reading, again, because they're not playing, they're not. So before you read, it's been highly correlated and even researched that a child who struggles with speech will be a delayed, reader. And so I've seen that. I've seen how children are going and going, and yes, they academically they may be prepared, but they're not prepared with these social emotional areas, like they don't know how to be a good peer. They're not successful in adult relationships because they've been taught to sit there and listen and write, where they're not interacting with each other appropriately and not being facilitated. Like, for instance, like there may be two children playing in one area and they're trying to solve their problems together, and that's always my role as a teacher, is to facilitate that. So they're arguing and they'll come and say like, so and so is hurting me, and I'm like, well, what do you think you should do? And it's through that play that they understand, well, like I need to talk to him. And then the other student may not know what to say. I'm like, what should you say, or what do you need to say? And it's truly coaching them on these appropriate play, and how that develops later is good. And when we're not doing that, it leads to so much other problems in the academic area, and the inability to problem solve is so high later in life, not just like reading and math, but in other areas in high school, like that. Yes, I don't know how to explain it. So they're not truly like what people think, like, well, that's not a school problem to teach them social emotional, but in reality it should be, because they spend the majority of the time in school. So it is our job to teach them these appropriate social emotional development practices. And I'm sorry, I forgot the question.
No, that was good. That was good.
The social skills you learn, like the team building and all those
Problem
talking
solving.
through places, problem solving, and all of these skills that you're mentioning, transfer over to high school and post life. Because when I speak to businesses about what type of skills our students are lacking and missing, it's always the same answer: the soft skills, the team building, the compromise, the being able to problem solve. And are a lot of these skills missing because we're not giving them the time to develop them, since they're playing, at that play development level in early childhood. And it really does affect, you can tell which students have had that upbringing and which ones haven't, and which ones have had a lot of time invested in that and in the playground doing the soft skills with their friends, instead of just in front of electronics or doing worksheets and not developing the communication skills that transfer over to our jobs and how they interact in careers.
And can you introduce yourself?
And I'm Erica Guerrero, and I have been teaching for 11 years. I'm a high school teacher, a special ed teacher, also a career technology teacher.
And then should we say that we both work also with students with
Well,
children?
that's going to be my next question. And Diana, you're in a unique position where you have both students in general education and students in special education. And so I wanted to ask if play is one of those things that's kind of universal, that people of all abilities can do, and it has a positive effect on them.
It is. It has extreme benefits, and I can attest to having just children with special needs, and then having now what we would call more of an inclusion classroom. And children with any abilities can play. They can play. They can learn through play. I've seen how students with Down syndrome will pick up cues from other children on how they're supposed to be playing. The language that develops at this age through play is beyond measurable. Like, these children can truly engage with each other. I mean, children in wheelchairs that have nonverbal skills. So I have students that are like, Miss Roman, we're playing house, but I think he needs food. I think he's hungry. And they just develop these skills and compassion with each other that I would never have guessed 3 and 4-year-olds have the ability to process these skills and to articulate them and truly develop empathy without the coaching. Like they just know. It's like they just know what to do with each other, regardless of their abilities, regardless of, oh, you have to be nice to that person. It's just like, this is my friend and I'm going to go play with him and I'm going to go. I had a student who had to be built a special area because of sensitivity to the environment. But the other kids would go into his little kind of cabin and would play in there with him, and you could see that joy of having my friend near me and playing with each other. And that could never be replicated in a worksheet or in an iPad. I'm gonna start like getting a little emotional because it's so important that we teach children to empathize, but they have it already and they learn it through play. And if you've never seen it, you won't understand it. You've never seen it. So I think it's beautiful that children with special needs are united with everybody because they're just as able to play and develop skills.
And do you think, right now, I think a big topic is mental health in our country, right? And empathy is such an important skill. And like you said, you learn it from play. And when you remove that, are you from, their age group, their area, and remove the ability to build those skills and learn empathy and so forth, is that not showing a pattern that we see as teenagers, as young adults in our country, the lack of empathy, and being able to empathize is an important skill that, if you look up, helps with mental health and in working with others with mental health. And it's such an important part in our country and normalizing disability, intellectual disability, and mental health disability. Because if you normalize mental health disability, people are not afraid to speak up and ask for help. And when we are missing that, it's a huge trigger and a red flag, because how many adults are going untreated, and where does that lead and develop? What do we get out of adults with mental health issues who are afraid to speak up? We get a lot of tragedy.
Off of that is that having grown up in the district that you teach in and being, if not in inclusive classrooms, but doing, specials and art and all of those sort of courses in recess with students in the special education classes, like I was playing with them. And so I remember being on the playground with one specific student and playing with him every day, and then flip to high school where we're best friends. And I think that in our school specifically, like the R word, for example, like the word retard or retarded was not used. And it wasn't until I graduated from high school and left my district where I started hearing it. And it sort of caught me off guard because I was like, what? Like I didn't grow up hearing that word. I didn't grow up using that word. And so I think that's sort of one of the positive effects of having inclusive play specifically, is that you grow up and it does give you that empathy and understanding. So then you sort of understand that, oh, I don't want to use words that hurt my friends. And so in my experience, it's been super beneficial, and not even like, I wouldn't even just say it's beneficial, but it's been really important for me and for my friends who have disabilities, and for every person, that we were allowed to have those inclusive play opportunities. But sort of talking there about how the benefits that you get out of play that you wouldn't get in paperwork or classwork, I was wondering if you could sort of expand upon that and talk more about how the skills that you want children to learn in early childhood doesn't necessarily translate with paperwork or coursework as it would with play.
So, like, I think the most important is the ability to problem solve and use those critical thinking skills. So, and perseverance. Like, those three are one of the ones that you truly see children develop in play. So, let's say we have one little boy and he wanted to build the tallest tower with the blocks. And I'm like, okay, what do you need to do? And he could, like, he's been working on this for a month, and that speaks, like, he's persevering and he's sticking to his problem, and he's going to solve it. He's going to problem solve, and he rounds up his friends to come help them. And then they started using vocabulary. He's like, I need to build a strong foundation. And he's like, now, and then he's using words like pillars, and I may have said, okay, the foundation, but for him to continue and understand what that truly means, you would not get that vocabulary in a paper word. Like, you might learn the word in a spelling word, foundation, but to truly know what it means is different. And then, I mean, he's persevering, and now he's kind of recruited 4 or 5 little friends to come help him again, team building skills. And then he's thinking, like, so every day I do like a check-in, like, so how's the, and he's like, well, I did 8 blocks, but it's still not tall enough. So he's using numbers. And these children are 3, like, and using extensive vocabulary. He's recruited one of my assistants because she's taller. Now he knows taller, shorter, and was like, hey, I need you to come help me put the last block on top. And then, so now he's thinking outside, because he said, I think we need a ladder. And so it shows how play is so meaningful. Like, he's thinking outside of the box. He's thinking of, what else can I look for to help me with this? How can I get other people to help me? He's solving his problem. He's persevering. I mean, I know that if something takes too long as an adult for me, I'm like, I'm just going to give up. And here he is, 3, and it's taken him a month, and he's learning these skills that on paper, would that show you team building? No. Would that show you problem solving? No. He's critically thinking. He's thinking about outside the box. He's building teams. I mean, in a worksheet, you could not get that. In any worksheet, you would never understand that. And that can be related in any area. You can go outside on the playground, working in the sandbox. Like, those skills can be taken anywhere, and I'm sure you need them as an adult. I know I need them, and you can't get that through a worksheet. You can't get that on an iPad. Can you problem solve? Maybe, but team building, thinking outside the box, probably not.
Right. Have you seen in any districts you've worked in, or have you heard from any experiences from other teachers that you know of how policy and legislation has affected their classroom and has removed play from it?
Yes. So I know some districts in the state of Texas who have to follow due to grants or specific title money, like certain titles have like a discrepancy, like you have to use this curriculum, you have to do this. So then it takes away from playtime, because you're sitting there learning about letter formation and numbers and patterns, which you still learn in the block area. I mean, you can still learn all these things in play, through play. And 3-year-olds are not getting recess. I can't imagine what that will do to them as adults. You need some time, like, adults get breaks. We have lunch breaks, we have 15-minute breaks. As an adult, I mean, we're adults. Children need these breaks, and we don't understand that. They need this time away, and play is work for them. And they need that, and we're taking that away, and they're seeing major behavior problems in the classroom that should be allowing them to play. They should be going outside for recess to run and develop these gross motor skills and fine motor. Like, they're saying, like, oh, he can't write when they're in 3rd grade. Well, yeah, because he's never had that muscle tone when he was 3. He never developed it. Or even as far as we have a behavior support person in our school district, and he says, when we were children, we got to do somersaults, and we I don't know what they're called. Like, I guess it's a somersault. And so he said, we developed this core muscle in the cortex and cerebellum. He said, well, children are not using those muscles. And he's on those are important as you get into middle school age, because that's the part that reduces, like, of course, teens are more risk takers, and he's impulsive. And he said it develops that, but if we're not developing it in early childhood, it's going to take longer for it to develop. And so I do have friends that are like, oh no, my children don't go outside for recess, or they only have one 15-minute break. And they have worksheets, like worksheets for 3 and 4-year-olds. Like, what does that teach them? What does that teach them? That paperwork is more important. And then, like Erica said, it leads to these mental health issues. I have to do my work. And you're not taking that time to really decompress as an adult, because you've been taught that paperwork and sitting there is more important than taking time to truly do the things that you enjoy. And then that leads to depression and anxiety, and diabetes is even related to that. When you're not out and about and working, like truly working your muscles, you're not an overall wellness. And I see that. I see how it's also, the more that I see it, I feel like it truly impacts children who are of color, because that's where you get the grant money, and children who are in low socioeconomic environments, because those are the schools that get those grants. But in order to get those grants, you have to follow the state curriculum, which doesn't give time for play. It doesn't truly meet the needs of the students through play. That's what I've seen in other districts, not the one that I work for, because we're there. Our school district truly works on professional development, and that is an area. And our school district says we are the foundation for learning, and so they truly want these children to have that solid foundation in early childhood.
Well, and I haven't seen the research on this, but I wonder how much it correlates. If you're in a district with limited playtime, you're 3 and 5 years old, they have energy. They're meant to play. And if they're not doing that, you're seeing behaviors in the classroom. So then in turn, they're reporting that, your son or daughter can't sit still. Your son and daughter can't focus. And so then in turn, do the parents, especially when there's lack of more further education, then go to the doctors. Well, this is what the teachers are reporting. He can't focus. He can't sit still. All of, this information without the added part of they don't have time to play. And then how many doctors who, you have really, really good doctors who stop and really try to get all the facts and gather information and not right away give a diagnosis or so forth. But you also have doctors who don't, who are very quick to say, it looks like ADHD. Oh, you know what? We can try this medication. And how quickly does that turn into students and young kids using medication that truly didn't need it? They just needed time to play and get that energy out and do what 3 and 5-year-olds are supposed to do. So the linkage in that, I haven't done much research on it, but I'm pretty sure that you could probably find it. And if it hasn't been found, they should start a study.
And not just that, but teachers not being educated as to the developmental. Like, I know in other districts, a teacher who's not successful at reaching STAR testing, I'm not sure, the proficient, or, every school district.
Scores.
Yeah, they get a score. So what they will do, if this teacher isn't meeting those standards, they will push them down to a pre-K or 3, 4, or 5-year-old.
Non-testing grade
level. And they don't know how to work with children of this age. So what do they know? Worksheets, iPads, and they're not giving them what they need. And that's what I always emphasize. You get what you need, not what you want. And as an adult and as children, like, Some of our students have disabilities, so they have to take breaks and whatnot. And the children already know, like, and they're so empathetic as well. You get what you need, not what you want. And these children in these districts that have to get this specialized curriculum are not getting what they need. They're not getting their needs met. And therefore, teachers are reporting, oh, he's a behavior problem. He can't sit. He's spitting. He's biting. Well, because he's not getting enough time to play. And, when people say, like, oh, we had indoor recess and my class was horrible today, they didn't get time to play. And can you imagine every day of your life being that way as a 3-year-old?
Children want play, but they need play.
Yeah, it's both. It's a need and a want. And we're lucky enough to be able to develop our own curriculum and our own units. And I can cook in my classroom to teach science. I can cook. And you want to talk about children sitting for 30 minutes truly engaged in a chair? We're cooking and they're all sitting there, and it's also giving them choices, but they're playing and they're learning and they're trying new things, and that's how you develop these skills with play.
But that only comes through a district giving teachers autonomy to teach the way you need to. And talking about being engaged through play, Diana taught my son at 3 years old and was doing science and taught him. They did a pumpkin pie in class for Thanksgiving, and he's 6 years old and will harass me probably on a monthly basis. Will go find his book where he had the picture of the pumpkin pie and the recipe in it to ask me to go play with him and make pies. So I know it sticks, and I know that they truly learn off of play, because now that he's a reader, he opens it up and he reads it, and he says, Mom, look, here's the recipe. He says, let's make a pumpkin pie. Well, I don't know how to make a pumpkin pie. Oh, no, look, here's the book, here's the recipe. And you're seeing the development of the skills. Rita, Mom, put the recipe right here. Mom, look, it says pumpkin pie. It starts with a P, pumpkin pie. So seeing that not only did he play in class and learn it, he remembered it, and then when I'm telling him I don't know how to bake a pumpkin pie or make a pumpkin pie, he's now using the problem solving to remember to go get his book and bring me the recipe, and he solved that on his own. And how much of that was just through one play lesson.
Right. So it sounds like play not only helps you develop these important skills that you wouldn't learn otherwise, but it lets them learn these skills while being agentic and sort of being able to do things on their own and not having to depend on someone.
And I would also say it also helps with those relationship skills. Like, they have been playing with each other for a year, and now it's 3 years later. He still remembers his friends from these classrooms. They're not sitting there next to each other just working on a worksheet. Like, they've truly formed a relationship, just kind of like you said earlier.
Yeah.
You built that relationship through play, not through a worksheet.
Yeah.
And that's so important. So I would say even more important than some of the academic skills that we're pushing down.
Right. Well, and sort of speaking about what's being pushed and forced upon administrators and teachers and ending up in the classrooms, if y'all could talk to legislators and policymakers making policy specifically for childhood education, what would you tell them?
I would say come spend a day in both classes, a classroom that gives teacher autonomy to truly teach these developmental play skills, and then go to a classroom who does not have that and who doesn't have the resources to teach that and give the exposure of these things. A curriculum is not going to teach a child to be a successful adult, no matter what. Any curriculum, what the research, and if you've been in teaching long enough, you'll see that there's trends, and like, this curriculum is now all we're going to teach. And then 3 years later, it's like teachers are saying this is not successful, this is not appropriate.
Right.
And every time these reading skills and sight words are being pushed down to pre-K, and punctuation at 4, like correct punctuation, like they need to know uppercase and lowercase and where to put a period, or if it's a question mark. Teachers are going up to these expectations, and we try to make these as play friendly as we can, but there's only so much you can do if a child's not ready. And when you teach them to love learning, they'll continue that. Right. But if you're teaching them to read and write when they're 3 and 4 without it being play-based, you're doing them a disservice. And I would love our legislators to truly come see what it should look like and what it shouldn't look like. And I always give parents this analogy, like, would you put your 3-year-old on a 2-wheel bike? Would you put your 3-year-old on a 2-wheel bike? No. Why not? And then they're like, well, they're not ready. They haven't developed. So you would start them probably on a tricycle, then go to a bike with training wheels. And then when you feel like they're ready, you'll put them on a 2-wheel bike. But I feel like nobody else understands that. Nobody in legislature understands that there has to be these skills prior to learning, prior to reading, that we're pushing down and they're not ready for. So please come see us. Come see what it's supposed to look like, and come see what you're pushing down and what it's doing to our future, our kids.
You know what I would tell them? I would tell them that if you want to see productive, engaged adults and citizens, if you want a workforce who has problem-solving skills, who has team-building skills, who has empathy, who is mentally and emotionally well, and if they are not mentally and emotionally well, they have the skills and the ability to ask for help without a stigma, because the adults around them have developed empathy and relationships. If you truly want to build a generation who grows up and has these type of skills, if you want youth to grow up and be adults and have the team building skills and all the skills necessary to take care of you when you are elderly, then you really need to think about and research the types of legislation and the types of rules you are putting on these young children, because these young children are going to grow up and take care of us. And if you don't want to be in a nursing home and sit down and have an iPad put in front of you, then you may want to do some research into what you're developing.
Yeah. Well, I read a bumper sticker one time that said, I wish I'd, like, taken a picture of it or written it down. It's something along the lines of, like, all the best presidents are busy in the classroom. And as an education major and learning about all these different, like, national and state policy blunders in regards to early childhood education, that's what I keep thinking of. It keeps popping up in my head where I'm like, they absolutely did not ask educators if this is the best course. And so I hope that that y'all's voices can reach legislators and policymakers, people who are senators and representatives, and they can actually listen to the people who are in the classrooms carrying out these policies. So thank y'all so much for talking to me today, and hopefully we can make a change for the better in our early childhood education classrooms. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Next, I talked to Erica's son, Mateo. He is 6 years old, but he'll introduce himself here. Can you introduce yourself? What's your name?
Mateo.
Mateo, how old are you?
I'm 6.
You're 6? Mateo, do you like to play?
Yes.
Do you like to play while you're at school?
Yeah.
Do you think, well, while you're at school, you get to play a lot or a little?
Little.
You only get to play a little? Yeah. Do you wish you could play more?
Yes.
Yeah. Why do you like to play?
Because it's fun.
It's fun? How does it make you feel?
Happy.
How about when you have to do classwork and you get papers and you have to fill them out? How does that make you feel?
I'm sad.
Makes you sad? So do you wish you could play every day, all day? You can just hear. Do you feel happy? That's good. Well, if you could talk to every teacher in the world, every teacher, what would you tell them? Would you tell them you want to play more at school or less or what?
More.
You want to play more? How does it make you feel when you get to play?
Happy.
Does it make you feel strong? Yeah?
I can't hear you.
Yes.
Yeah? So your message to teachers is let us play more because it makes us feel happy and like we get to make our own choices. I think personally that I'm very fortunate to have gotten to go to exceptional play-based early childhood education schools. However, I was pretty young, so I wanted to talk to my mom to hear her perception of my early education experience.
I'm Laura Mullins, Carrie's mom.
So today we're going to be talking about play and early childhood education and why it should be a part of every early childhood classroom and that kids should learn through play.
Okay.
And I don't really remember being a kid very well because that was a long time ago.
Yeah.
But
hopefully you remember some of it.
I remember some of it for sure.
Okay.
But I don't really remember my preschool experience that well, but I do remember that I got to play a lot.
Uh-huh.
And so I was wondering if you could fill in any of the blanks and tell some of the listeners about.
About your preschool experience?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you went to Christ Lutheran and you started when you were in the 2-year-old program. So for you would have been about 2 years and 9 months. And you went 2 mornings a week. And the teachers were the same teachers that Zach and Maggie had, your older brother and sister. And you would always, the teachers would always have really fun activities for y'all to do. It's like, I remember one day it was make green eggs and ham day. So you would read the green eggs and ham book, and then you would actually cook green eggs and ham and eat it.
Right.
And so for me, it was a great way for you to get to do stuff like that maybe necessarily I wouldn't do with you at home, like maybe because it was too messy or, but it was, and the teachers they would talk to you about your experience and they would write it down and they would take pictures. And then at the end of the year, you would have this great journal with pictures and, like they would say, Carrie, what would you think of green eggs and ham? And you would say, I thought it was disgusting or,
Right.
So it was a good way to do some really fun activities and that you wouldn't necessarily get the chance to do at home with a group of other children. And there was no wrong answer in anything you did. It was all self-directed. And it was all really, really fun activities. And you went through the 2-year-old, the 3-year-old, and the 4-year-old program. And as you got older, the activities, would be a little more geared towards your age, but.
Right. So can I ask, why did you choose the preschool that we went to as opposed to one that would have had more, because have you heard the phrase or the saying that kinder's the new first grade? Where the things that you do learn in first grade, you're learning in kinder. And now they're starting to say that preschool's the new first grade.
Okay.
So why did you choose the preschool that we went to as opposed to one?
Well, actually, it was just by chance because we moved to San Antonio from Houston in the summer of '96. And Zach was 3, and I wanted to get him in a Mother's Day Out program. And I just called a couple places, and they happened to have an opening. I didn't really know anything about it, but it turned out to be, great and by far, I think, one of the best preschools in San Antonio.
Yeah.
I think they had a good balance of play. Y'all went to chapel, and so it just kind of worked out that way to answer your question. But I was very pleased with it.
So why do you think that preschool like the one I went to would be more beneficial for young children than one that would look more like a first grade classroom?
Well, I think for you, I mean, for my kids, I can't speak to everyone, but I think it was a good confidence builder, a good building block for regular school. It was great for your confidence. I mean, you everything you did, the teachers just were your biggest cheerleaders, and you never got in trouble. You know, you might have, but there was no timeout or anything like that, and it was all, you know, they praised you for everything you did. You made some, you know, obviously some of your best friends there, but I think for my kids, it was a little bit structured, and then you got there at a certain time and came home for a certain time. So I think it was good in that way to prepare you for school. But I think more than anything, it was good at that early development age in developing your self-esteem and your self-confidence, because you would go there and come home just. It was never a bad experience.
Right.
School was good. It was positive. It was fun.
Right.
So in that way, it was preparing you for school, in the sense that you were ready to go, and you were mentally had the attitude that you would succeed. I mean, you weren't scared to go to school, and so. I think sitting you down at that age and teaching you to read and teaching you math problems, and not that you didn't do very simple basic activities like that, but they weren't structured. And I think learning in that sort of unstructured, positive, self-driven environment prepared y'all for school in a way that you were excited to learn and excited to go to school.
Yeah.
It was a good experience.
Right. Well, and the way that we learn to do things is instead of, sitting down and taking blocks and having a paper where we would count them and add things up, we would read Dr. Seuss. We'd read one fish, two fish, red fish, blue fish, and we'd start counting like that. And then to practice learning, we would, read a book, or to practice reading, we would read a book with the teacher and then know afterwards that we were going to do some game involving the book. So it was never like, oh gosh, we have to learn. It was like, oh, we get to learn.
Exactly.
This is so fun.
Yeah.
And it didn't even feel like, it's kind of like when you sneak vegetables into a kid's dish without them knowing.
Right. So you were getting it, and you were getting the structure of going to school without the formality of it. It was a very fun learning environment. I mean, I never remember you coming home, any of y'all, one day from Christ Lutheran and not being anything but just, you had the best day ever there. So there were no bad experience. So you didn't carry that into kindergarten, first grade.
Right.
But you knew. I mean, you knew what school was. You knew you were going to be dropped off and picked up at a certain time. So in that way, you were ready for school. I think.
Right. Well, and I would say a lot of the people that I met in Christ Lutheran, I'm still friends with today.
Right.
Because we weren't coming into a classroom and sitting at a table and doing worksheets next to each other and maybe working together.
Having seat assignments. I mean, you were sitting on the floor and mingling and...
Right. And we just played with each other all day. And it was, we got to really get to know each other through that and start to build trust in each other. And so, I mean, I'm probably closer to people I met, how many years ago was that? 17 years ago, than people I maybe met in elementary school, where we were just sitting and doing worksheets and we weren't having this time to, do activities that builded our trust and friendship with each other.
And you were doing, it's like you said, sneaking the vegetables in. You went to music class every day for, 15 minutes. It wasn't long, but you were exposed to a wide variety of things at that age that might have helped you develop interests early on and things that you might not have been exposed to.
Right. And I remember in when I was in preschool, we would do the athletics, but it was so fun. We would do games based on songs. And it wasn't like, I'm doing this because I need to exercise. It's good for me. I was doing it because it was so fun. And I look forward to that every day. Whereas when I got older and I was in elementary and middle school, athletics was like the worst part of my day. I hated it. So things that when I got older, when I wasn't doing them in a play way and they were more like because I had to do them because the state required it, they were fun when I was in preschool. Because the way that it was child-led and sort of independent, where we had agency to choose what we wanted to do, it made it really fun. So, do you think that preschools like the one that I went to are... I mean, I guess you don't know because all your kids went to the same one.
I don't know. It's been a long time. And it's, there might be a child that does want to sit and have one-on-one time and learn math problems and sit at a computer. So who's to say if that's the right answer for everyone? It was certainly the right answer for all of you all.
All right.
And I would hate to see, I think that school is causing such stress and anxiety in kids that it's so hard. I mean, you don't want to start that at 2 years old. That would be really sad, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But it depends on the child. I think there probably is that rare child that wants to sit but I'm not sure that you know that at 2. I think it's nice to get them in an environment where they can be exposed to different things and work on their self-confidence, and then move on to a more structured formal education, sort of.
Right. Well, I mean, child development theorists all sort of generally have the same idea that children learn best through play, and that it teaches them a lot of skills that they wouldn't learn if they weren't playing by them, like leading themselves in play. And I think with the freedom of having a school that is play-centered and play-based is that if there is a child who learns better, not through play, but through worksheets and assignments, then they sort of have that freedom where they can amend that one student's
and Christ Lutheran was good for that. I mean, they weren't going to force somebody to do something they didn't want to do.
Right.
They could tailor the activities to.
Right. When we did green eggs and ham day, and I thought it was the grossest thing I've ever did. They didn't make me do it.
They didn't make you do it. No,
but you, gross.
But you sat and watched and probably had a good time doing it.
Right. But I think whereas a school that's curriculum and coursework based would have a really hard time amending one child's coursework to be play-based.
Right.
So I think that's what's good about, I think play-based curriculum, if it needs to be amended, is the most, flexible. So that's sort of what I'm trying to get at, is that play-based curriculum and play-based learning should be in every early childhood classroom, just like my early childhood education was as well.
Right. I would agree with that. And, you all are the only experience that I have, but I think it was certainly a positive experience for you all and for me too, for our whole family.
Right.
I think, in my opinion, it got y'all off to a good start.
Right. Although I consider myself to have gone to an exceptionally good preschool and kindergarten, I don't really remember play being much in my elementary school classes. I remember going into first grade and hearing third graders talk about how scared they were to take the TAKS test, which is now known as the STAR test. And I remember this mounting anxiety every year that I got closer to third grade, of this dread that I was going to have to take this really hard test that would maybe hold me back a year. And I just remember that fear being instilled in me. In addition to that, I don't really remember play being a critical element of my early education experience in elementary school. First and second grade now seemed like I was preparing for that TAKS test. I was learning skills so that I could test well on it. This was my public school education experience. So I wanted to talk to my friend Rachel, who went to private school, and to see how our perspectives of play in the classroom differed.
Howdy, I'm Rachel Massey, studio art BFA major. Fun girl.
And what's your relationship to me?
Friend.
Awesome. So Rachel is one of the only people I know that went to private school for a large part of her education experience. And so most of the people I've been talking to throughout this podcast journey have been individuals involved with public school, myself included. And so to understand how policy affects public schools, I think a good way to understand that is to compare it to private schools that aren't under the same regulations that public schools are. So I'm here with Rachel today, and I'm going to ask her a few questions about her private school early childhood education experience. So can you describe, Rachel, what your early childhood preschool kinder experience was like?
Yeah. A lot of it was play oriented. We did a lot of play. I remember having this giant, like, McDonald's sized playground indoors, and that's like a very big memory of my time there. And we would just spend a lot of time playing there, or playing like video games, or doing a lot of arts and crafts. Like the majority of like what I produced there was like arts and crafts based, whether it's like storytelling through arts and crafts or just arts and crafts for the fun of it.
And so Rachel mentioned earlier that she's a studio art major, so obviously art's a big part of her life. And so I was wondering if you can, sort of going back in your development and through your own timeline, have you been able to see how that time of doing arts and crafts in your childhood has impacted you today and led you to make the choices that you've made?
Yeah, I mean, arts and crafts kind of became like a routine for me, and so I just kind of found joy in doing it because they like enforced it so heavily in like pre-K and kindergarten and stuff. And so like all throughout elementary school I was like drawing all the time and really interested in anime in middle school, and then I phased out of that, and in high school I like finally like pursued art full term, and so I was able to just have a full lifelong interest in art.
Yeah. Do you think that passion would have been instilled in you or developed in you if you hadn't been in the preschool that you were in?
Not entirely sure. I don't think so, just because like my school really heavily enforced just art time.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you, we were sort of talking about this earlier before I was recording, but how you think your development and your education experience would have differed if you hadn't been to private school.
If I hadn't been to private school, I don't think I would have been able to pursue all these different art tracks, because like in high school I did art and dance and band and theater and like visual arts inside and outside of school, and we just had a lot of freedom in like our courses and like our course schedules and what we could do and what we couldn't do. And so I was really able to explore and like find what I love to do in private school. And a lot of people in public school have like told me that they weren't able to do like all of that, or they were like impressed I was able to do so much in high school. And so private school has led me to generate a schedule that I wanted to take.
Right. I can remember in high school, I think I was able to take 2 electives, and then usually you had to take like, it was usually every year you had to take like a Spanish class, or we had to take speech and health, which was 2 different semesters, and that would take up one of your electives. Those were counted as electives. So like sometimes you would be in 6 classes that were state required, like a state required science, social studies, math, English, etc. And you could have like 1 free period to like do what you wanted. And so I frequently would hear from people. I was in the peer tutor program, which was where students in general education classes would go into special education courses and basically just hang out with the students in special ed and go to their classes with them and support them and just like develop friendships. That's what it was for. And I knew a ton of people who were like, I'm in band and that takes up my elective and I have to take health this semester, so I don't have the ability, or something of that nature. And sports also took up an elective too. So no one I knew in public school like got really the chance to explore really what they wanted to do. It's cool hearing that you had that experience, and I wish that people in public school got the chance to explore themselves more, because I'm sure you've seen this too, that there's a lot of, I talk to people who are undeclared in college and they feel like they're losing time because they only have a certain amount of time while they're here in college, and they've quote unquote wasted a year here because they're not studying what they're interested in because they don't know what they're interested in. But probably I would assume in schools where you have the option to explore, you wouldn't have as much of that, like you wouldn't have that big a difficulty in college. But it sounds like your early childhood education has been very impactful on you.
Mm-hmm.
Do you, just in your personal experience and in your personal opinion, have you been able to tell a difference in, your education experience or in the experience you've heard from other people, or, just your own thoughts? Have you been able to tell a difference between learning through play and learning through, like coursework and paperwork.
Oh yeah, totally. I've noticed that just in courses that I took in high school, like differences in like teaching styles, like teachers who would do more project-based things and less just like busy work or less just like straight like vocabulary and paperwork like that. Whenever I did like project-based assignments, I had to like think about it a lot more. It wasn't just I gotta finish this paper, it's I gotta create this object, and it like required creativity and like a lot of different other parts of my brain instead of just like math. It was like, I don't know, more creative aspects. And so
Yeah.
I was able to learn more in more project-based assignments, I guess. I don't know. I think personally, I just enjoy learning through play because it's more enjoyable. It's like you're actually playing, and
Right.
so you're able to have fun and enjoy it rather than just having to complete a task. And so I think there is a difference because one can enjoy one more rather than the other because it's meant to be enjoyed. Play is meant to like be joyful, have fun with, I think.
Well, and I wanted to ask you, being a studio art major, from what I hear about your classes, especially like your performance art class, is that y'all learn a lot through just doing. It's not necessarily like lecture based, or maybe it is sometimes, but it sounds like y'all do a lot of just like doing things, and that's how you learn. And so I was wondering if you could talk about that. It's not early childhood education experience, but I would assume that's something that like works for an adult would work for a child as well,
Yeah, that's actually like one of my favorite classes I've taken, like my entire time of college so far. And there's like readings that we do, but like we have Socratic seminars based on these readings, and we discuss elements of performance and day-to-day life and both like in artistic senses. And so we're exploring thoughts and ideas, and then we put those thoughts and ideas into action through small-scale performances in class. And so like we read about it, we discuss it, and then we put it into action, and it's a lot of fun. And we're able to learn about stillness exercises or chance operations through exercises in class. And it seems like we're just playing, but we are examining and exploring ideas for artistic purposes.
Right. Well, I think that's probably how play as instruction is in any level at any age, that like it looks like it's just like you're having fun, but you're actually learning a lot through it.
Yeah.
And whoever the person is probably absorbs more, I would think, than if they were just sitting down and having a lecture and like having someone drone on and tell them things. So it sounds really cool. It sounds like you also had throughout your time in private school, you had a lot of freedom and chance to explore. And so I was wondering if you could talk about like the accessibility of that, of private school, and that right to the freedom that private school allows you.
I was very fortunate to have like the experience at my school and be able to explore a lot of stuff, but it was mainly because my mom worked there, and so it was accessible through like my mom having a position and like getting discounted tuition, and like that's how I was able to do it. But all of my classmates were like way upper middle class, straight upper class, very wealthy, very fortunate, but not aware of like their opportunity to get in. And so like I do understand that like it was a privilege that I got to go there, and I'm grateful for that.
Right. From these perspectives that have been shown and the various studies and articles that have been published studying playful learning, obviously play-based learning is a great way for children to learn. However, current education policy throughout the country and in the state of Texas values academic achievement over social emotional development and the development of empathy and physical development and all other aspects of development that play is proven to be beneficial for. However, according to the Center for Public Policy Priorities, 1 in 10 children in the U.S. lives in Texas. That's a lot of children. If Texas were to adopt playful learning into its education policy and in its public schools, other states may follow suit. Texas has a huge influence throughout the country. With the vast amount of children that live in Texas, we owe it to these students that we adopt the best education policy for them. And what would be best for them is playful learning.